Opera and video games. Goes together like peanut butter and well, not really, does it? Those are not things you often hear uttered in the same sentence. But what if I told you that because you like certain video games, you might actually love certain operas? This series is called If You Love That Video Game, You'll Love That Opera, where I try to connect opera and video games into one. And why should you trust me to explain it? Because I'm an opera singer turned voice actor turned YouTuber with over a decade of experience in the world of opera, and I've been gaming since I was 7, so I think I can help. Red Dead Redemption. If you're like me and you love Red Dead Redemption, you might go crazy for Giacomo Puccini's La Fanciulla del West, otherwise known as the Girl of the Golden West. This opera was written 100 years ago in 1910, 100 years before the first Red Dead Redemption came out. Red Dead Redemption came out in 2010. Coincidence? I think not. The Girl of the Golden West is Giacomo Puccini's interpretation of what the Americas during the Gold Rush were like, based off the 1905 play by American author David Belasco. Cowboys, shootouts, love affairs, bandits, love triangles. The second half of Act 2 is one of the most intense moments in all of opera, actually. A card game for someone's life. Palpably tense, as Minnie must win a card game to protect the man she loves. This is a fantastic opera that you will absolutely adore if you appreciate the story of Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. I can guarantee it. I personally find this opera to be pretty unique, and as far as I can recall, there are very few operas based on the Wild West of the USA. Fanciulla was even proclaimed by Puccini to be the greatest composition of his career as a composer. Sadly though, the opera overall performed fairly poorly and received much more negative criticism than anticipated, despite Puccini still feeling proud of the harmonic and musical landscape of this particular production and work. I do think the general perspective of this opera is changing as time goes on, but it certainly is not nearly as popular as some of Puccini's other heavy hitters, like Madama Butterfly, Tosca, or definitely not like La Boheme. The operas I just mentioned are actually what any good opera will do when they're concerned about funding, as these are always crowd favorites, and for good reason. All told, the connection to the time period of Red Dead Redemption is certainly there, and I think that if you love that series as much as I do, you'll absolutely enjoy the complex nuance of the characters in this opera. This opera is much more movie or play than a true opera. Oh, it's also worth mentioning that the famous musical Phantom of the Opera also borrows a motive from Fanciulla del West. See if you can find it and let me know in the comments. Elden Ring. The cultural phenomenon that Elden Ring is and was shares so much in common with Wagner's Ring cycle, it's absolutely impossible to not recommend it to you if you're a FromSoft Elden Ring fanatic. This series of operas is one overarching story over the course of 15 hours of music.
Is that it?
Starting with Das Rheingold and ending with Götterdämmerung. It features all manner of gods and monsters, sisters and brothers embroiled in romance, and a ring with incredible power. Sound familiar? Richard Wagner's Ring cycle, formerly known as Der Ring des Nibelungen, is a monumental 4-opera cycle that weaves together mythological themes, gods, heroes, and the struggle for power. The cycle consists of Das Rheingold, where the forging of a powerful ring sets the stage for conflicts among gods, giants, and Nibelung dwarves. Die Valkyrie, which follows the story of Sigmund and Sieglinde, twin siblings who fall in love against a backdrop of divine schemes. Siegfried, centered around the adventurous hero Siegfried and his quest to reclaim the ring and find true love with Brunhilde, a Valkyrie. And finally, Götterdämmerung, depicting the catastrophic downfall of gods and mortals as the ring's curse takes its toll, leading to a fiery finale that symbolizes the end of an era. Wagner's Ring cycle explores themes of power, love, greed, and the cyclical nature of history, with a grand and intricate musical tapestry that has left an indelible mark on the world of opera. Wagner's Ring cycle is by no means the best entry-level opera by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it can be kind of overwhelming, especially for a layperson with limited or no experience in opera. However, if you're a fan of Elden Ring, to me, it's a no-brainer to experience this story at least once in your life. You see, Wagner believed in the idea of something called Gesamtkunstwerk, or total work, which was a synthesis of all art forms: drama, music, dance, text. The closest thing you could find to a movie in 1849. It succeeds in many ways. These are the stories about gods, their failings, their flaws, and their power. Roger Scruton from the Financial Times put it beautifully when he wrote, "Its theme is the death of the gods and what the gods have bequeathed to us, namely the knowledge of and longing for the sacred. until we cannot live fully as free beings. These moments are the foundation of all our attempts to endow human life with significance. Another reason you may be interested in this interplay between the Ring cycle and Elden Ring is due to the use of leitmotifs. In Elden Ring, every boss has a motif, a song that plays when that character is fighting you. Radagon's theme is the theme of the game, almost like Radagon's entire journey is the crux of the story. The music moves us in ways that connect us to these fantastic characters. Radagon's warrior might, Millennia's affliction, pain. We hear these same types of musical ideas in Wagner's characters. When Wotan seals Brunhilde into a deep sleep, we hear the conflict in his wants and the decisions he must make. We hear the magic fire music as he invokes a ring of fire around her that only a true hero can pass through to wake her. Just as we hear the breaking of the ring in the theme for Elden Ring, we hear the fire burned by Wotan. Trust me, I think you'll love the Ring cycle if you love Elden Ring. Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1, published by DICE and EA, released in 2016. I stand by the opinion that it is one of the single best first-person war shooters to ever be created. There are other exceptional titles that lean on World War I, like Verdun, Tannenberg, Isonzo, and Valiant Hearts, but beyond these, the list is pretty small. Battlefield 1 is a phenomenal and brutal experience. The single-player experience, putting players in 6 different war stories that move throughout the different campaigns and fronts of the war, really do a fantastic job to make you feel like you are actually in the conflict. The game does an amazing job in the audio and sound department, making you feel like you're truly in the front lines of trench warfare in World War I. And to this day, it is one of my favorite video games. All that said, if you're a history buff like I am, you may love the opera Silent Night by Kevin Putz. Silent Night is an opera based off of the screenplay for Joyeux Noël, a fantastic and tragic film based on the 1914 famous Christmas truce, when all combat ceased for one day and night on Christmas. Silent Night is a modern opera that plays out and sounds much like the score to a movie or video game. It's jarring, violent, even peaceful at times. Much in the same way that Battlefield 1 has its war stories that allow us as players to step into moment-to-moment experiences with characters. Silent Night is much the same. Throughout the opera, we get a telescopic lens into individuals, like the opera singer Nikolaus Sprink, forced to war in Germany, Lieutenant Audebert on the French side, and Jonathan and William Dale on the Scottish side. Each story is so human and gives a glimpse of what the experience of being in the middle of the trenches would have been like. A staggering, true-to-life story that I recommend you see if you love Battlefield 1 as much as I do. Of course, the one caveat is that Silent Night focuses on the deeper meanings of peace, the human experience, and the possibility for reconciliation against enemies, separating them from the flags they wave and the very essence of their shared humanity. Not exactly the same as you hop into a Battlefield player lobby and a 12-year-old with a Lewis gun insults your mother. But yeah, World War I, an incredibly tragic period of history that if you love Battlefield 1 will also elevate the experience of Silent Night for you. If you can catch it, as it's a modern opera and it's not performed nearly as frequently as it should be. It should be in the modern repertoire, and it is, but also not. It's very complex there. Genshin Impact. What's an anime aesthetic game got to do with opera? Well, surprisingly, quite a bit. There are tons of components of Genshin that lean heavily on music, and even opera if you're thinking about Fontaine. But for the sake of this particular video, I want to talk about Commedia dell'Arte. Commedia dell'Arte originated from Italian theater and essentially is the precursor to sketch comedy and improv. Usually all about playfulness and pantomime, when we talk about Commedia dell'Arte, we are talking about stock characters. The brute, the idiot, the jock, the flirtatious woman, the whatever. It's all about stereotypes in a lot of ways. These days, I guess you could call them stereotypes, hero, heel. In a lot of ways, wrestling actually feels like modern iterations of Commedia dell'Arte. So you have characters that are stock variations of old men, sneaky and manipulative servants, macho military officers, essentially heightened versions of real characters. Commedia started in Italy, of course, based on the name, but spread throughout Italy and beyond. I bring all this to your attention because Genshin Impact's main antagonists are all connected to the Commedia dell'Arte by their names: Dottore, Scaramuccia, Tartaglia, Arlecchino, Sandrone, Capitano. I can't tell you how crazy it is for me as an Italian to hear the names of these classic figures that I learned about 10 plus years ago in music history class. Also, these characters connect invariably to a fantastic opera by a Ruggero Leoncavallo, which translates to Lion Horse, called I Pagliacci. Pagliacci in Italian means the clowns, and this opera is anything but clownish. I Pagliacci is a fantastic starter opera about deceit, betrayal, murder, and unrequited love. The opera recounts the story of a traveling troupe of comedians led by Canio. He murders his wife Nedda after he discovers from his friend Tonio that she has a lover named Silvio. What Tonio fails to mention to Canio is that he is in fact also in love with Nedda. She scorns him, and he stabs her in the back by revealing her secret to Canio, because if he can't have her, nobody can. The opera is part of a musical time period called Verismo. Verismo, verità in Italian, means truth. This time period was a major deviation from what was previously a structured performance practice in opera. Generally, this time period was about real people, their real struggles, and their extremely heightened emotions. Usually these pieces are incredibly dramatic, almost to the point of being over-dramatic in their effort to tell a story. Pagliacci would be a great place to start if you love Genshin. See which characters you might know when you listen to the play within a play section of the opera. That's right, in this particular opera, there is actually an opera within the opera, moments before everything goes straight to hell. Beautiful music though. If you're a fan of Assassin's Creed Origins, set in ancient Egypt, you may just love Giulio Cesare in Egitto, Julius Caesar in Egypt, an opera by George Frederick Handel. This opera features many of the characters you may have enjoyed meeting along your way as Bayek, namely Cleopatra. Fun fact, this opera's leading man was a castrato named Senesino. Castration in the early 1800s was still a common, if reprehensible, practice, many castrati being revered as we would currently revere movie stars. Operas written in this time period were all about florid singing and tons of notes. Despite having a plot, ultimately, one could argue their purpose was to fuel the star power of their main characters and how they could sing as many notes as possible in the least amount of time with runs and fioritura, as it's called. This is connected to me with Assassin's Creed due to the historical implications. Real characters, real people, a lot of made up stuff for the sake of drama. Cue Assassin's Creed. The interesting part about this unlikely matching is that they share quite a bit in common. Naturally, they are both set in Egypt, both feature historical figures, as mentioned earlier. Both of these works allow us as viewers to explore cultural and societal aspects of ancient Egypt, especially given Ubisoft's fantastic and interactive Discovery Mode feature that has actually been used in schools and is absolutely one of the highlights of the series for history buffs. These two works also lean on political rumblings. Bayek mostly working in the shadows to take down his enemies, and Cleopatra's interactions with Caesar in the Handel opera. This is, unironically, a fantastic pairing. There are many more operas that we can connect to video games, and do let me know if you'd love a part 2 of this, because this was super fun. As always, if you like this, feel free to like and subscribe, and check out the videos on the channel if you want video essays about music, or if you want to check out the emotional implications of the songs that we all love from video games. Thanks, and I'll see you later. Bye.